Good afternoon and welcome to our UB Alumni Webinar Wednesday series. My name is Christy Fields and I oversee the Alumni Career Services program here at UB. Today I am honored to introduce you to Courtney Walsh, Assistant Dean for the Center of Executive Development here at the University of Buffalo. Courtney oversees the Executive and Professional MBA programs and non-credit training for the UB School of Management. As Assistant Dean, Courtney co-created and teaches courses and training on emotional intelligence. To date, she has taught and coached over 500 business professionals. Courtney also has planned international business trips to Europe, Asia, and South America. These ventures offer a wide array of educational, business, and networking opportunities for her professional clients. Prior to UB, Courtney held multiple positions with Delaware North Companies in Buffalo, New York, and Boston Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. In addition, she served in multiple strategic marketing positions for entertainment and nonprofit organizations. Courtney earned an MBA from the University of Buffalo and a Bachelor of Science from Ithaca College with dual majors in management and marketing. Courtney also has certifications in developing leaders through emotional intelligence from EI co-founder Richard Boyatzis at Case Western University and a certificate from the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago in negotiation and decision-making strategies. I am aware that some of you have already submitted some questions, and we will leave some time at the end of today's webinar for Q&A with Courtney. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them through the chat question box on your screen. With that said, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Courtney Walsh.
Thank you, Christy. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning, and I look forward to the journey that we're going to take for probably the next 40 minutes, and then there will be plenty of time to share some resources with you and answer questions that you might have. One of the reasons we picked this time to do this webinar is that there tend to be common times of year when we find ourselves thinking about our future. When we think about those things that we would like our personal and our professional lives to ideally be. For some of us, it can happen around a change in our lives. It might be near an important birthday or at the end of a calendar year. It might be at a time when our mind naturally starts to think of what the new year will be like, and for me, that's the case. No matter when you naturally think about the future, the time for you to make the plan is at that time. Today we'll talk about how to go from thinking about your future career to taking steps to make it a reality. You might be interested in a big change, or you might be interested in updating a current life plan you already have. Or you might be wondering how to re-enter the workforce. And maybe you aren't sure which category you fall into, and that's just fine. Today we're going to go through a process for career management, and I've prepared a list of resources for you so that you can begin to move yourself forward to even more advanced professionalism that you have dreamed of becoming. So we want you to dream big. But dreaming is a little bit more than magic. It takes a fair amount of planning. So I'm going to take you through a process, as I mentioned, that I go through myself. And I can tell you one thing, it takes a lot more time than I expect. And it's really kind of hard to know how much time you need to leave for dreaming. But there are some rules of thumb that I can share with you. I do my thinking and planning during the holidays because I can usually find time to reflect on the past year and dream about what I want to happen in the year to come. It's also a time when I'm with family and friends. This means the ideas that I come up with end up reflecting my whole life and not just reflecting the professional goals I want to achieve. Some years the planning is harder than others, especially when I sense I need to make bigger change. Some years my thoughts come together faster than I imagine, and although I have to admit there aren't many of those years. What's always difficult is setting aside the time. Dedicated time is essential to move ourselves from dreaming about the future to acting in the present, acting today. Our brains are hardwired to enjoy dreaming, but we are also hardwired to be motivated by rewards we receive today. So therefore, setting a time to think and then create a plan that rewards us each step of the way is critical, and that's what keeps you going to achieve the future results. In addition to finding dedicated time to think, there's a second challenge, and that challenge is knowing where to begin. I have the good fortune to work with hundreds of bright, accomplished professionals each year. And a common thing among these individuals is that they think their resume is the beginning of the process. The challenge with that approach is that you're likely to be sending signals of uncertainty to potential employers, or even worse, showcasing past accomplishments when you're ready for a change or to move forward in your career. The good news is that there is a definite solution to the second challenge. To reimagine yourself and reinvigorate your career, it's essential to follow 3 steps. These 3 steps are: first, know yourself, then know your options, and finally, take action. By planning now, you have the freedom to adapt as things change in the job market and in your life. Since we all know we live in a world filled with change, we definitely want to be prepared so that we can adapt. So what does know yourself mean? It means you need to invest time in understanding your strengths, the skills that you are uniquely good at, know your key personal values or your non-negotiables, and know your desired work environment and ambitions. Before you start working on your next career step, you need to be clear on what you're looking for. If you aren't sure what you want to do, you need to do your research before applying for even one job. If this seems like a daunting task, I've provided some resources at the end, and we'll go through those together, that will help you guide you to your own answers. Sometimes people are still stuck at this stage. If this sounds like it could be you, you might be suffering from something called chronic stress. This is the type of stress that builds up over time and isn't released, and it really prevents you from learning and being open to new experiences. At the end of this seminar, I've given you some resources that will help you measure your stress, measure your positivity, and help you identify if you need to recalibrate some things in your life before you can try to dream about your next career. I've also included a test that will give you an idea of how resilient you are in the face of difficulties. Most of these tools, as you'll see later on, are free and open for you to use. To know yourself, you need to learn and dream. Your ability to dream and learn will go up when you feel safe, but pressured by the plan you create. That's not the same as stressed. Another resource to consider is your past performance evaluations and any assessments that you took in your workplace, or even as part of a school project. Bringing all of these resources together can help you see a pattern in your strengths, as well as those things that are unique to you. Putting together these strengths and really understanding what's unique about you is a very positive experience. More often than not, we're focusing on the things that we lack and not the things that we're really good at. So this part of the career planning project is actually fun, and setting aside time to do it will actually be a boost for you. So think about a time when somebody actually gave you a compliment, and maybe in your mind you dismissed it. You dismissed it because it was something easy that came to you. When that happens to you, I want you to stop and listen to what those folks are saying. Because more often than not, what they're doing is identifying something that you're quite good at. You might dismiss it because it's something that's easy for you. But if it's easy for you, that doesn't mean it's easy for anybody else. Better yet, if you're a more structured person, you can meet with 3 trusted connections and ask them what they see as your greatest strengths. The question you might ask is, if they had to come to you for advice on any topic, what topic would that be? If you're into something a little more technology-oriented, a little easier, text 6 friends and companions, colleagues from work, and ask them, if they had to describe you in 3 words, what would those 3 words be? The goal is to define your strengths and the things about you that come across as most unique. The challenge with this is that we can't do it ourselves. This is our blind spot. We need to ask those around us for help. The patterns that begin to emerge are your personal brand. Another way you can get to know your values and your interests is to review your calendar, journals, maybe even your emails, to get a sense of how you spent the last 6 Saturdays. What do you do with your time when you have nothing urgent to do? What does your free time say about your true interests and aspirations? Make a list of your professional frustrations and the accomplishments you're proudest of. Those things alone should produce patterns that help you identify your goals. There's a workbook listed as a resource that you can work with to help you dream about your future and identify your life and your professional goals, if that's more the way that you'd like to move forward. Once you have a good sense of your strengths, then you'll want to identify the skills you're missing. Ask yourself, what skills do I need to learn in order to be ready for the position I want next? Or, for lots of us these days, what skills do I need to keep the position I have? The acronym VUCA, V-U-C-A, is something that we're hearing more often and is rising in popularity in business. This term has a long history, but in today's world, it's often used to describe the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous working environments that we're all in. This popular term highlights your need to demonstrate that you're constantly reinventing yourself and that you can succeed in a changing environment. The skills we were all hired for may not be the skills that are needed in the next couple of years. Recognize that others judge us by our past and we see ourselves in the future. You have to illustrate the future you want for people to understand that that's where you want to go. If you don't do this, you're telling people what your past experience is, but not what your current and future interests are. Our resumes, our LinkedIn profiles are only pictures of the past, unless we add to it the things about current and future that we want people to know. Speaking of LinkedIn, have you looked at your online reputation and seen how you need to update yourself? If you haven't already done this, you should be Googling yourself, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Employers are looking for people who are constantly keeping their skills updated. It tells them that you are interested in learning and ready and able to change as business needs change. Once you have a strong sense of who you are and what you want to do, you need to bring life to your brand. All of those strengths that you have somehow need to come to life for people that you aren't actually going to get to meet, and some of them you may never get to meet. So you've got to thread those ideas throughout the LinkedIn profile, have them prominent in your emails with any contacts you have, and they need to come up in your talks with your network about your goals. Just want to share an example with you here. I recently worked with an executive who'd been downsized. He'd been looking for a new position for about 3 months without much success. We talked about the things in his last job that he enjoyed and what he hoped his next job would be. From that conversation, it became clear that he enjoyed strategic planning. However, strangely, these words weren't used on his resume or his LinkedIn profile, not even once. He'd done a number of strategic projects, but was using different terms, some of which were acronyms that only someone in his industry would understand. He hadn't updated his LinkedIn profile or joined any LinkedIn groups related to his interests in healthcare strategy. He hadn't summarized his project management training in a way to highlight the strategic roles it played, and he hadn't talked about his strategic interests with any of the people he had connected with before me. Instead, he talked about being open to opportunities. I often see this happen with professionals, especially those with significant military backgrounds. Even when people have managed larger teams or overseen more complex projects than anyone else applying for a specific job, it can be difficult to break through the wall. If you haven't translated your accomplishments and interests into plain English, your network and employers can't envision you in the desired role. So they either don't hire you at all, or they offer you a position at a level below what you're qualified for. You have to describe what you're looking for and translate your background and your skills and your interests in a way that employers view you as already skilled for these opportunities. In this digital age, your electronic reputation is more important than anything else. Many years ago, my father asked me if I had Googled myself. At the time, I laughed. But he was right. What you see when you Google yourself is what anyone meeting you will see first, not your resume, not the person you think you can project when you meet someone. Make sure your profile and your Facebook page reflect the personal brand that you want your connections to see. Given the easy access to digital information, first impressions are often the only glimpse of you that people will get. And those first impressions are digital. You can also take advantage of networking to boost your brand further. For instance, if you have a meeting with a new connection, confirm your appointment in advance and say something like, "I'm looking forward to talking to you on Monday about your career. In order to make our time together as efficient and effective as possible, here's a little background information about me." Briefly lay out your accomplishments and your interests. This lets you actively build your own brand. If we did this verbally when we met people, we would look like we're bragging, but in this frame, people take it as normal course of action. Now the person knows who you are before you meet and can kind of give you the respect that you deserve. Managing your career is something you need to do all the time, not just when you're looking for a new job. And this is especially true in today's job market. In the old days, we began work and assumed that if we didn't screw up, we'd move up the career escalator. We assumed that we would eventually do well enough to move up and ultimately retire. Now, our careers are much longer, and most of us will have multiple careers. On top of that, the economic crisis in 2008 caused many people to delay retirement. At the same time, young professionals have continued to move into the marketplace. The result is a career escalator that is really crowded. And in order for us to stand out and move up, we need to actively manage our careers. So now we need to know what those options are. There's a book called The Startup of You. The co-founder of LinkedIn, Tom Reed, introduces us to a concept that we call permanent beta. He says we should all be learning and growing all the time. So we need to think of ourselves as a work in progress and invest in ourselves each day. In the second step of career management, you focus on knowing your options. This includes surveying the career opportunities that exist. Books like Knock 'em Dead list resources by industry. Online job boards often do the same. The range of jobs can be quite wide, and some specialties will grow. On the other hand, others will decline, and some will disappear altogether over time. So how do we prepare? And what skills should we be developing? The broad answer is to be flexible, to be curious and open to new and unexpected opportunities. However, that doesn't mean we can apply for all kinds of jobs, hoping that this buckshot approach will result in a dream job. The real answer to knowing your options and narrowing down your choices is in your networks. Take advantage of your allies and acquaintances to help you move forward. This fact becomes even more important when people realize that 2/3 of jobs are never listed online or in a newspaper. For organizations, hiring the wrong person has become very expensive. Therefore, they want to hire people they are sure can do the job. This means they hire people that they already have gotten to know. So you want to know what types of organizations you're interested in and make yourself known to them through your network. You can anticipate opportunities in these organizations by paying attention to news clippings, online resources, particularly newsletters, and look for things like major changes in product offerings, changes in physical locations, mergers and acquisitions, all of which will result in opportunities for some. So what kind of connections do we need? Developing and keeping in touch with your network is the most important thing you can do to manage your career. Admittedly, if you haven't done this in a while, it's going to take a significant amount of energy to reactivate. But maintaining contact with those people would be much easier than starting from scratch and will energize you and keep you moving forward. There are many ways to approach creating and enhancing your network. For a moment, I want you to do a difficult thing and imagine that you've just been told you've been laid off. I would hope that you would take a couple of days to allow yourself to regroup. You need that time and space. But then, you need to take action. And who are those 20 people that you're going to contact and ask for advice next? Reach out to those individuals now, while you don't need anything specific from them. Make those connections now and make them mutually beneficial. People often ask, how do they do that? Well, have you read any articles that these people might find interesting? If they're more social people, have you invited them for a cup of coffee? Do you know them through activities that your children share? Maybe that's a way that you can offer rides to each other. You need to adjust your list based on your future interests as well. If you want to get employed in a different type of role than you have now, you need to gain industry knowledge and network with the people in that industry. Networking gives you a chance to engage with the people who are pursuing the same kind of growth opportunities as you, so you support each other in your new activities. Using a term from a long time ago, I'm going to ask you if you remember the concept of a wingman. Think about who your professional wing person could be. Who the person that you could take with you to industry association meetings. It's the person who can say good things about you, and people will take it much more positively than if you say it yourself. Actively identify a wing person and agree that you'll talk each other up during these opportunities. We often hear people talk about mentoring, and I'm going to suggest that rather than thinking about having a mentor or two, you should think about having a board of directors for advice. You might need someone who helps you prepare for interviews. You might need a person who understands the big picture view of your industry, and maybe a third person who has a large network of their own that they're willing to introduce you to. You'll want a network that comes from many sources. For instance, if you want to move up in your organization, your network should include people from all over the company and a few people outside your organization that know your industry. And most of all, you should also be talking to your current boss about the new skills you're learning and your long-term interests. In Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, he identifies 3 types of networkers. You definitely need to know connectors. They're the hubs of networks responsibility, and they're the people that create that small world phenomena. Their networks overlap. But you're also going to want mavens in your network. They are highly knowledgeable people and will have information that you can't readily get. And having salesmen in your network can help you expand your influence through persuasive people. The important thing about this concept is that you have supporters from many sources, and that you stay in touch with them on a regular schedule and offer something mutually beneficial when you reach out. You need to foster a relationship close enough so that you feel comfortable asking for help when you need it. The last stage of career management is about action. Career progression doesn't happen in giant steps. It happens in many small steps, building experience and understanding and progressing towards a goal. Experience and opportunity are often what people call luck. But by building your skills and experiences, you're preparing for future opportunities. If people call it luck, that's fine, but you know better. The same thing can happen in your current position. When your organization does need to implement change, you should quickly be identifying ways you can contribute and carve out new roles that are aligned with the strategic direction of the organization and your personal interests. Sometimes opportunities are created more over time than quickly. So if that's going to be the case for you, think about how you would walk into your boss's office with a proposal showing you could add more value to the company. Or ask your boss if she has a problem that needs to be solved in the next 45 days that you can help her with. If you don't have any obvious immediate steps, think about what skills you should develop to prepare for the future. How are you going to actually get the experience you need while you're still in your current role? Doing things like volunteering for projects at work, joining discussion groups online, getting formal training or education are all ways to demonstrate your interest and gain experience. Our brains pay attention to threats and undone tasks. They're hardwired that way, and we can't help that. But what we can do is we can focus our brain to pay attention on certain things. This is called neural priming. Your career plan, written down with goals and dates, creates the path to focus your brain on. That plan needs to include rewards for each milestone you complete. Define what you'll reward yourself with, and that will help you stay on track, help you move toward the future. So you need to decide how you're going to invest in your future today. Tom Reed from the Startup of You makes a strong case for thinking laterally. In the old days, we used to think the people in our network needed to be a level above us. But today, people in jobs just like ours, in our organization and in other organizations, are the best connections for us to have. So it's time for you to subscribe to trade group newsletters, do conference presentations, maybe even contribute to some articles online. Another way for you to kind of plan for the future is to create a reflective activity by looking at the questions top-ranked CEO coach Marshall Goldsmith suggests in his daily questions. Marshall's well known in the CEO world for helping them stick and focus to their plans by using these daily questions. Tell your family and friends what you plan to do. This helps create an accountability mechanism because they're going to come back to you and ask you how it's going. And certainly use technology to stick to your plan. Things like your iPhone or your Galaxy or your Outlook calendar. You can create small tasks for you to do each day to ensure that you ultimately make your future happen. I've got a list of resources here that I want to walk through with you and explain a little bit. We will send these resources to you in a PDF file after the webinar is over so that you can access them as you would like. The first resource is a book on activating your brain. You heard me refer to some of the wiring in our brains. This book is good at helping you understand what things you can fight against and how to work with what your brain is already trying to do for you. The second piece is an article from the New York Times that talks about the plan is what makes the magic happen, not the dreaming itself. And the third piece is a brief blog post on procrastination, and it illustrates the point that although we like to dream, unless we reward ourselves day to day, we're not going to get to the point where we realize the dream. We're motivated by the day to day. Back to Marshall Goldsmith. Tremendous guy, written any number of books. There are a couple of his books that I would recommend. The first book to recommend is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. If you're a young professional, early to mid stages in your career, that book can provide some very useful tips for you in the workplace. His new book is really appropriate for anybody, and it's called Triggers: Creating Behavior That Lasts, Becoming the Person You Want to Be. This focuses primarily on self-awareness and what those things are that can derail you from doing the things that are in your best interest. Most importantly, Marshall Goldsmith has a very rich website, and he provides dozens of videos, short clips, that can help you move forward, particularly those clips focused on daily questions. Number 5 is the book of workshop questionnaires that I mentioned early on. It's the book that we use as the basis for our course on emotional intelligence in both our executive MBA program and our professional MBA program. This is a great tool if you're the kind of person that finds it hard to get started reflecting. There are all kinds of exercises, some which will be very easy for you to do, and others which just may not be of interest to you, so skip those. But by doing these exercises over and over and putting together a period of 30 to 40 minutes where you're doing them at once, you actually create a dreaming state for yourself where moving forward can be quite a bit easier. If you're somebody who likes more scientific look at what strengths are, there's something called Strengths Finders 2.0. This is something that you need to purchase. You purchase the book, and inside is a code that you can go and use on the website that's provided here, and it will spit out a handful of words that are your strengths. The book itself is actually a backup to the assessment and only a resource for you to be able to look up what those strengths mean. So really what you're purchasing is access to the online assessment. The next resource is the stress scale that I mentioned earlier. Many of you have probably seen this somewhere in your lives, but it looks at all of the kinds of things that can be going on in a person's life and puts a weight to some of those activities that are stressful. By adding up all of those weights, you can see how far along the stress scale you are and if you are in the chronic stress area. And if you're that far into the chronic stress area, now is not the time to be doing the dreaming. Now is the time to look at how to recalibrate and get yourself back to the you that you really want to be. Probably the best of all of these resources is the Authentic Happiness website from the University of Pennsylvania. There is an organization that was created at the University of Pennsylvania called the Positive Psychology Association. Out of that has come a positive psychology master's degree, and a number of the world thinkers in positive psychology are associated with this organization. They provide all kinds of resources to read, and most importantly for you, a lot of assessments that are highly valid and reliable and free. So the first one that I put here is something that helps measure your positive and negative effect. So by taking this very brief survey, you can find out if you're feeling more positive or negative about situations that you're in right now and what you might need to do to adjust that if that's necessary. The next thing is the VIA survey on character strengths. Another resource for you to identify your strengths, and in this case it's free. And finally, for those of you who are interested in knowing more about how resilient you are, that's something that is very helpful in the workplace and at home and sought after by employers quite a bit. It's called the GRIT survey, and that's also part of their website. The Startup of You is a book that was written by Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, along with Ben Casnocha. The thing about this book is you can certainly purchase it, but what they've done is put on their website virtually everything you're going to need to know. Executive summaries, entire slide decks, just advanced tips on using LinkedIn. It's a very rich resource for you. If it's been a long time since you've done a job search, I strongly recommend getting the book Knock 'em Dead 2016, and probably in January they'll come out with Knock 'em Dead 2017. There are a few books in this series. I recommend the Job Search Guide. I don't think you need the Resume Search Guide or the Cover Letter Search Guide at this point. The Job Search Guide is a very easy read, and it gives you a sense of the steps in a career search and where you'll find the jobs and where you won't. This is where you'll see the backup resources to the fact that 2/3 of jobs aren't posted anywhere in public. So you need to have a network that can get you in those doors. And lastly, if you're interested in knowing more about VUCA, the acronym that originally came out of the military, but is really now been co-opted by business to talk about the rapidly changing environment that we're in, there's an article here free at Harvard where you can learn more about that framework. So here's the important part of our time together. I'm going to give you a few seconds here, and what I really want you to do is just jot down some words that will help you identify something you're going to do, one concrete thing that you agree to do in this next week. And then one concrete thing that you would like to do within the next 30 days. It may be to take what you've done this week a step further, or it may be a bigger project that's going to take you a longer period of time to accomplish. But commit yourself to something. And then ultimately, what is it going to be 3 months from now that you've accomplished based on what you're going to learn that will help you move towards your future self? I suggest that in the next 3 months, that needs to be your career plan. Something in writing, by hand or digitally, that you can adjust and follow, and it becomes part of your daily life for a few moments each day, so that you're prepared for whatever comes in the future, and that you don't have to react quickly without being able time to reflect if a situation ever arises where things change quickly. By doing these 3 things, what you're doing for yourself, again, is more neural priming. So you're helping yourself create the pathways in your mind that you will use over and over, and then your brain naturally goes to them over and over to keep you on track to create your future. At this point, I'm going to open it up to questions, and I understand from Christy, we have a few questions that came in advance, and we also have some questions that may have come over during the actual webinar itself.
Excellent. Thank you, Courtney. So just to go ahead and begin, the first question that we did receive is, how do you suggest building a career plan after several years of not working, so possibly in a career gap? What are those steps that you suggest?
We actually see that quite a bit with the executives that we work with. And the first thing that I would say is be straightforward. Anytime a career gap exists, if it looks like someone is hiding the gap, it will make a potential employer turn away. So we've seen everything from people who've taken time off to be with their children, people who've had to take time off to be elder care caregivers, people who've taken time off to go back to school. I would just be forthright about that with the folks that you've talked to. I would also make sure that you add to any profile that you have volunteer activities that you may have done during the time you weren't employed. If you have time to do an unpaid internship now to reinvigorate the skills that you maybe haven't used in a while, that's perfect.
Wonderful.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You can finish up if you still have to answer that question.
If you have anything that can show that you've updated your skills, if you maybe took an online course or joined an organization's newsletter, put all of those kinds of things there so that showed you were keeping yourself fresh.
Great, thank you. The next question that we did receive is, how do you show continued interest and development at a company when moving towards management is not part of your career plan? In large companies, sometimes this seems to be the normal path. What would you suggest in this situation?
Sure. You're going to want to understand what the trends are in your department and in your company. And ask yourself, if new skills are needed tomorrow, to do the job that you're doing today? If there are, start learning those new skills on your own. Don't wait till someone tells you that it's coming down the path. Or since you've been doing a job for a while, can you see new and better ways to do the job that you're currently doing? Talk with those that you work with about improving the processes that you're doing right now.
Excellent. The next question that we did receive is, Courtney, how do you balance work and continuing education, such as a certification program?
I'm going to acknowledge, and we all know, it's difficult. The easy answer is we have to make time, but how we make time, sometimes we need to know where we're spending our time. So if you're someone that just finds your day completely filled, try to keep an electronic shorthand journal of how you fill your day up for the next couple of weeks. And then go back and look and see where you spend your time. Some people find that just doing something simple on the internet in the evening can result in an hour and a half loss of time. You kind of get sucked in and time goes by. You know, if you're someone who spends a few minutes each day playing a game, electronic game on your phone or at home, that time can be redirected too. For some people, doing continued education or training in a set classroom time at a set time just isn't going to work. So maybe there are online or self-directed learning opportunities for you to be able to fit that learning in where you can find short periods of time in your schedule. Ultimately, the best learning is done 50 minutes at a time, no longer. So if you can find a couple of 50-minute periods in your week, you've accomplished a great deal.
Super. And the next question, Courtney, can you just elaborate a little bit on emotional intelligence and ways that someone can develop it?
Absolutely. Emotional intelligence, particularly if we're talking about the Boyatzis and Goleman framework, and that's really the most popularized version of emotional intelligence, focuses on 4 things. Know yourself, know how to manage yourself, know others, know how to manage others. So based on today's seminar, know yourself and know how to manage yourself, virtually all of the things that I gave you are related to emotional intelligence. So understanding what your strengths are, knowing the things that you need to get better at in the area that you're interested in, getting advice from others because we have blind spots and they can see things about us sometimes that are not so clear to us. All of those things are related to emotional intelligence. And the book on the resource list, Resonant Leader, that's actually the textbook we use in the emotional intelligence course, and it gives you exercises as well as a path to follow to improve emotional intelligence. The good news is if you have an interest in it, you can get better at it. We all get slightly better at it with age over time, but you can get much better at it much faster if you'd like to.
Wonderful. Courtney, the next question that I did receive is someone who said they had an interview yesterday and they, meaning probably the employer, voiced a concern that since this person has so much experience, they thought they would come in and possibly change everything. How do I deflect that?
It's actually pretty common these days for people to have a lot of experience and that to be a common concern. So what you want to do is show that you have an understanding of the goals of the organization that you're going to, and that your energy, your learning, your interests are in alignment with theirs. Particularly if it's outside your direct career path that you're in right now. I mean, you were lucky enough to get an interview, so they see in some way the relativity of those skills being similar. But you need to explain to them why you would be interested in something that might not be as senior or as complicated a level as you've had in the past. You may have a slightly different path of interest at this point in your career, but you're going to need to be able to explain that to them. And following up with an email and illustrating that for them is absolutely fine.
Great, thank you. Another question, you talked a little bit about and referenced rewards when keeping you motivated and on task while building your career plan. So what types of rewards do you suggest?
Well, it depends on the individual. So for myself, rewards can be things like I enjoy unusual art exhibits. So I may set a goal for myself to accomplish something by a certain time, knowing that I'd really like to go to that art exhibit if I've accomplished it. Or hiking in nature and some special hike if I've done something on time. What I often find is once I get started, the activity in and of itself becomes a reward. So if you're trying to network and the thought of going to an event and meeting 15 new people and coming away with ideas to move your career forward, if that whole thing sounds daunting to you, create one of these outside rewards in mind. But what you're probably going to find is once you get a chance to know one or two of these people beyond that, they're offering you information that's so exciting by itself, in and of itself, that's going to feel rewarding. It's going to energize you to keep moving.
Excellent. Thank you, Courtney. Another question that did come through is, how do you overcome termination with cause? So something that's maybe since been addressed and you have taken care of, and now you're trying to continue your job search process and build your career plan.
I believe in being direct. They're going to be able to, you certainly don't want to put it on your resume that way, but when you're talking to individuals, sometimes they'll ask you things like, tell me about one of your biggest challenges. And one of your biggest challenges might be that you had a situation in your past where you learned something. And now you can say, well, I learned from that, and here's what I do differently, and here's how I learned to do that differently. Those are completely different. And if you can back that up by having a reference or some kind of a accomplishment that shows that you are different, so much the better. We've all made mistakes. The question is, how do we recover from those mistakes?
Excellent. Thank you, Courtney. Just in closing, I know we're getting close to our time today. I just want to say on behalf of the UB Alumni Association and the UB School of Management, I really would like to personally thank Courtney Walsh for sharing her knowledge and expertise with all of our UB alumni on the line today. This webinar has been recorded, and we will send you all the links within the next 24 hours. Also want to have you save the date for next Wednesday, December 14th, as Dr. James Lemoyne, Assistant Professor at the University of Buffalo, will be our webinar presenter. Dr. Lemoyne will present on servant leadership, and we will share additional details and the registration link in our follow-up communication from today. So just again, thank you to Courtney Walsh, and we hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day, and warm holiday wishes from UB. Thank you.